name is Mary, and what I'm about to tell you is the strangest experience I've ever lived through. A few months ago, my friend Carol and I were driving from Florida back to New Jersey. We had just finished visiting some friends who went to school down there. It had been a great trip. We laughed a lot, stayed up late, and it felt good reconnecting with everyone. But eventually, we had to get back to our normal lives. The plan was simple. Turn the drive into a mini road trip. Just the two of us, a car full of snacks, music in the background, and plenty of time to catch up. Looking back now, it probably would have been smarter to stay one more night, but I really wanted to get home. So we decided to do the entire drive in one shot. We drove through the night and into the next morning. A few hours after the sun came up, my back was aching from sitting so long. I told Carol we should stop somewhere, stretch our legs, grab gas, maybe find something to eat. We passed a few exits before finally pulling off into what was supposed to be a lively tourist town. To this day, I cannot remember the name of the place. It looked like the kind of town built for travelers. Signs pointing toward attractions, little shops, promises of local history. But the moment we drove in, something felt off. The streets were empty. The buildings looked old, worn down, like they had seen better days. Way too worn for a town that supposedly attracted tourists. It's hard to explain the feeling, but it was the kind of place where you just know something is wrong, even though you can't point to anything specific. You know that feeling when you drive through a ghost town? When the shop signs are still hanging, but everything feels abandoned? Yeah, it felt exactly like that. Except, it wasn't actually abandoned, which somehow made it even stranger. Our first stop was a convenience store. We parked, stretched a little, and walked inside. Surprisingly, the store looked completely normal. Carol started looking for a specific drink she wanted. When she realized they didn't have it, she got annoyed. She can be dramatic sometimes, so I just laughed and agreed we'd try somewhere else. But I grabbed a Gatorade and walked to the counter to pay. The cashier was a woman, maybe 30 or 35, dark brown hair, fairly tall, pretty normal overall. The only reason I remember her so clearly is because she was wearing suspenders, which is not something you see every day. I paid and we left. Across the street, Carol spotted another convenience store, so we figured we'd check there for her drink. But the moment we walked inside, my stomach dropped. The cashier behind the counter looked exactly like the woman from the first store. Same hair, same face, same height, everything. I froze. I must have been staring for way too long, because she started looking uncomfortable. Eventually, I asked her if she had a twin, or maybe a sister who worked nearby. She looked at me like I had just asked the strangest question in the world. Then she told me she was an only child, no twin, no sister, and that it was a strange thing to ask. I tried to explain, but she just kept watching me with suspicion. I grabbed Carol and we quickly walked out. She was confused, so I explained everything. I asked if she noticed the same thing, but she said she didn't even remember what the cashier at the first store looked like. She told me I was probably just exhausted from the long drive, but I knew what I saw, so I told her I'd prove it. We rushed back to the first store, but when we walked inside, the woman behind the counter looked nothing like who I remembered. This cashier was shorter, light hair, middle-aged. There was absolutely no way anyone could confuse the two. It was as if the first cashier had never existed. Carol told me to forget about it, that I was clearly tired. Eventually, I had no choice but to drop it. But all I wanted at that point was to leave that town. Unfortunately, we still needed gas, so we pulled into the first gas station we saw. The place was completely empty. Just our car, the pumps, and a small building in the back where you pay. We were literally the only car there. Carol and I walked inside. She looked around for her drink again. They didn't have it. I paid, waited for her, and we walked back outside. We couldn't have been in there for more than a few seconds. But the moment we stepped out, something was wrong. What had been a completely empty gas station just moments earlier was now packed. Cars filled every single pump. Some were lined up waiting. The parking lot was completely full. It was like we had stepped into the middle of rush hour at the busiest gas station in the state. And the worst part, it felt like everyone was staring at us. Everywhere we looked, people were watching. I have never felt more uncomfortable being around strangers in my life. This time, even Carol admitted something was wrong. We both had the same uneasy feeling. It was like we had briefly stepped out of reality, and when we came back, something had shifted. We decided to forget about food and just get back to the highway. Neither of us had much of an appetite anymore. Back on the road, we stayed quiet for a while. Then, after a few minutes, Carol and I started talking about how strange everything had been. That's when a car passed us. A Toyota Sienna. I remember it clearly because the windshield had a massive spiderweb crack running all the way across it. The side of the van was scratched up badly too. It was hard to miss. Carol made some joke about it, but about 10 minutes later, the exact same minivan passed us again. We were both absolutely certain it was the same one. That giant crack in the windshield made it impossible to mistake. But it didn't make any sense. We had been driving straight the entire time, at a pretty fast speed. There was no possible way that van could have gotten ahead of us again. Unless it never left. Carol started repeating, "Oh my God," over and over. I could tell she was on the verge of a panic attack. She told me to speed up, so I did. Inside, I was terrified, but I had to keep it together. I was the one driving, and I needed to stay calm for Carol's sake. All I wanted was to reach the highway and leave that place behind forever. At one point, I glanced down at the GPS, and that's when my heart nearly stopped. According to the GPS, an entire hour had passed since we left the gas station, which was impossible. I wanted to tell Carol, but I didn't think she could handle any more. So I just kept driving. Part of me was terrified the GPS would start sending us in circles. But eventually, we made it back to the highway. And just like that, the nightmare ended. Hours later, when we finally got home, the whole experience felt like waking up from a strange dream. Even now, when I think back on it, it doesn't feel real. People usually give me strange looks when I tell them this story. And honestly, I still cannot explain what happened in that town. But when I started researching similar stories online, I discovered something unsettling. There are actually other people who claim to have experienced things like this. But the strangest part of all wasn't the van. It wasn't the gas station. It wasn't even the identical cashier. It was that feeling, that deep instinct telling you something is wrong. like every part of your body is begging you to notice it. And believe me, I never want to feel that again.